right, here we are, Hunt, Fish, Thrive for our second episode. In the first episode, we talked about the preparation for an upcoming elk hunt I had, and now I'm home, and we're talking about the elk hunt. And as we're going to do with Hunt, Fish, Thrive, as is the purpose of Hunt, Fish, Thrive, we're going to talk about just hunting stories and fishing trip stories. But we are using this as a context, as a catalyst to talk about psychology principles, philosophy principles that lead us towards that thriving that we talk about in Hunt, Fish, Thrive, towards well-being, towards connections with the natural world, with ourselves, with others, and the habitats that we build around ourselves, natural and otherwise. So we definitely rabbit trail and branch off into a bunch of different things, but that are, we hope, at the heartbeat of what we want this Hunt, Fish, Thrive movement to be about. But I'll also tell you a little bit about the elk hunt itself. All right, thank you. Here's the episode. In the first episode, we talked about me getting ready for an elk hunt. Now I'm back from the elk hunt, and we're just going to kind of review that a little bit and talk about the hunt itself and some life lessons learned and some hunting lessons learned and some different things like that. We're in the early stages of developing our podcasting style and how we're going to do this, and so today we decided to do a little bit of a format change. Last time we talked, our producer Wes was off screen. You might have heard his voice a few times. This time he's going to be on screen with us a little bit and be joining us for that. We'll want to know what you think about that. Let us know if that's something you like. If he looks too much like Michael Pena, acts too much like Michael Pena, forgive him for that. But he'll be here for some comedic relief. But he's also here to draw out of me the things that we want to try to talk about with Hunt, Fish, Thrive, which is not just the hunting or just the fishing, but the journey of it all. So thanks for being here, Wes.
Thanks. Well, you're supposed to undersell so that I can over-deliver, but anyways, we'll just go with this.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Appreciate it. This guy Wes brings out of me the things I've been needing to say. He's been doing that for almost a couple decades now, which is pretty exciting in various projects we've been a part of. So looking forward to doing this now for the sake of hunters and anglers and well-being.
It's awesome. So you went on the elk hunt today. We're talking about well, we can start from wherever. You're obviously back.
I am.
But
I made it back,
you have,
which was not a foregone conclusion, by the way. I wrecked my truck 3 times on this elk hunt.
Visibly, I saw it when we were hunting last weekend, deer hunting, and I hadn't seen that side of the truck, and I thought you were embellishing that. And then I went to the other side and was like, dang, what did you hit? Anyways.
I hit a mule deer doe who was extremely committed to going across the highway.
That was on the fender highlight.
Yeah, that was the main wreck. Highlight, grill, hood, quite a bit of damage, still drivable. Yeah. So I hit that doe. I broke my heart, but just couldn't get stopped. She just wouldn't turn back. I also hit a mountain, and literally driving down a Jeep trail in my truck, driving F-150, for those of you that don't know. And literally, I'm not joking, it's East Fork of the San Juan River. I don't know, dropped off maybe 1,000 feet right at the edge of the road, goes up 1,000 feet on the other side of the road. I mean, this is a major gorge. I don't know if it's not really 1,000 feet, it's a lot, right? And the road or the Jeep trail became about the exact same size as the width of my truck, which was too much for me. And I had to back down a long way. And I have a topper on the back of my truck, and backing is completely a pain in the butt. So I'm backing down this until there's a little declivity in the cliff.
Yeah.
And I do about a...
Kind of hug into it?
Yeah, I do like a 47-point turn to get turned around.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't want to go off the front side, so when I was going towards the declivity, I really gave it the gas to back up in there, and I hit a tree and a mountain and busted my rear tail light fender, rear tail light. And then also going down rough trails, I thought, man, my truck's handling these ruts and holes and stuff really well. And later realized that my running board was completely dented up. That's what was taking those.
That was the vent, yeah.
So
you think you have high clearance, and then you realize, that actually there was another foot.
Clearance, now that is
another foot of clearance there.
Anyhow, so hard on the truck, but anyway, but I did make it back, so good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you want to start? I mean, honestly, I don't even know it. Honestly, I don't even know if I've heard much of it. Little pieces of things, I actually gave you a mic. I was like, hey, record on this if you get a chance, and you did. But capturing thoughts, there was that anticipation. We talked about readying, obviously, for going on this hunt. But then you get out there alone for days. What was that like?
It was. I've done things like that before. Been on trips, hunting trips, fishing trips by myself, but it is more unsettling. Or this one, for some reason, was more unsettling than I seem to have remembered. For some reason, I don't know why. And that was enjoyable. It was nice, as many say. If you listen to, if you make the rounds of the elk hunting podcasts, a lot of guys will talk about how important hunting partners are. And a lot will talk about the benefits of not having hunting partners, so you can be flexible, so you can be nimble as far as moving around the country, choosing what spots to hunt, things like that. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it on my own, is so, I could pick up and move camp, or I could do all these different things and just decide. There was no discussion. It was just, I have this thought, here's what I'm doing. I like that. And I wouldn't say it got lonely, but it was just discombobulating to just sort of be standing out there alone. And maybe just in one example.
Is this, you're out there, recap, how many days were you out there?
I was out there for 6 days.
She's out there 6, so day what is you begin to feel this? Shorter than you would like to admit?
Almost immediately. Yeah. And I think part of it, I developed kind of this perspective back in the 90s when I was in the Army, and I was over in Bosnia, and it was this life-changing experience. I was in my early 20s. You'll probably hear me talk a lot about it. So it was just really life-changing for me because I'd never been anywhere in the world. And I just remember feeling like I was only half experiencing it because my people weren't with me. So what I'm trying to translate that to is I think I started feeling that almost immediately, not from a negative sense, but just around every turn. Oh man, I wish my people could see this. I wish my friends could see this, or my kids, or my fiance. I wish the people who care about me and I care about could be seeing this with me. How could I possibly tell them about this? Mm-hmm. For example, I made a major move about halfway through the hunt and went, many miles up a Forest Service road, and then through a private ranch on a Forest Service road still, and then climbed way up in the mountains to literally the end of the road, where after that it's all just wilderness area, just no roads. I mean, I'm at the end of the road, camped, just in this epic scene, grassy meadows alongside a creek or a river, a creek actually, and I won't name it, then people know where I was and they'll go to my spot. And just this beautiful mountains, blue sky, campfire, wall tent, and thinking, I can't wait till my son and daughter can come play in this creek. Can't wait till April gets to see this. I can't wait. We got to come back here in the summer. I'm not even thinking about elk hunting anymore. I'm thinking about when can we get back here so my people can experience this. So anyhow, that's sort of more what it was versus being lonely or being scared or none of that. Right. None of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess it's from a positive perspective that sort of seemingly negative thing was happening.
Right. It's not like I want to go home. or whatever.
Not then.
Yeah.
Although, not to cut to the end, and again, this is something, it's funny, on the way home, I'm listening to a couple of podcasts where they're talking about their hunts, or I guess this was maybe on the way home and then maybe in the or post-seeding couple of weeks, and here's guys talking about how they all went home early on their trips and felt guilty about that, but are learning to not feel guilty about it. I feel like even sort of in the sort of conversation about do-it-yourself public land elk hunts, I feel like just in the last year or two, the conversation has changed from, oh, don't be that guy that goes home early from a hunt. Man, you'll feel like dirt about yourself. You feel like a loser. Nobody's saying that, right? But that's sort of the takeaway, to where even it seems like just this year, more and more people talking about, yeah, I went home early. I wanted to get back to my people. I'd accomplished what I wanted to accomplish on the hunt, and I wanted to get back to my people. So eventually that did become kind of wanting to go home, and then maybe we'll talk through how that decision happened later. I don't want any spoilers right now for how the hunt went yet, though, because you're supposed to not go home until you get something.
Yeah.
Or the tag season, the season on the tag is over. That's not how it always plays out, though.
So where do you want to pick up from that? Because that was I do remember us asked about what it was like in that frame, but really, honestly, I don't even have. So what are the things you're bringing back, to share? That's from that specifically, that experience. I don't even know. I don't even want to color, the conversation there. So, if you want to just begin, from what vantage point.
It's funny you asked that, because I feel like I've almost been leery of processing all that I brought back, and I'm not sure why. A lot of times when I come back from a trip, I just want to jibber jabber about it constantly. I think it's not unique to you. I think all of the people in my world have been a little bit surprised, because I've been back for a little bit when we're recording this. It's not like I just got back yesterday, and it's been some weeks, and I just haven't talked about it much. I haven't really showed my pictures. I took tons of pictures. I haven't really showed those off. It seems like so much of it's just been setting with me, which I think is a good thing, but I'm not sure what it is I'm still trying to process. Of course, we've been doing a lot with getting Hunt Fish Thrive off the ground, and I think that's consumed a lot of our time. And personally, I'm planning a wedding, and that's taken a lot of my time. So I think part of it is it's kind of gotten back burnered a little bit, but I think it's important to point that out, because I hear that from other people. I think maybe this is sort of the thrive part of Hunt Fish Thrive. We want to go on hunting and fishing trips, and we want to come back and just be like bursting at the seams with all this thriving, with all this that it's brought to our life. And sometimes that is happening immediately. And sometimes we're just back home. That old phrase, back to the salt mine. And I think that kind of happened on this trip a little bit. Came home, and I had a son who decided to not pass all his math assignments the week I was gone elk hunting, and seriously decided 2 days after my elk hunt, I'm never going on an elk hunt again until my kid's out of school, because I can't leave because my son just decided to totally tank on math, while I was gone. And I've since changed my mind about that, right? But sometimes you just come back, and that's what it's to. Yeah. So all these life lessons, all these things that...
Well, actually, even that's part of the process.
Right.
To say out loud that you had sworn it off, and I'm not going back.
Yeah.
If life falls apart, then I ain't doing it.
Oh yeah, I was just, and I wanted to be mad, and I wanted to blame, and I wanted to condescend towards myself. Oh, see yourself. Just all these things. So there was I guess you're reminding me. I said you bring these things out of me. That actually it was. Maybe that's why I've been avoiding it, because I came home not to joy. And maybe all that's self-manufactured, right? I mean, we can go down the road of, being overly concerned about kids' grades and all that kind of stuff, right? And so one of the things we're going to talk about a ton, in Hunt, Fish, Thrive is finishing business and maybe I'm trying to finish business in my son's life with, some things that I struggled with when I was young, But anyhow, that's what was consuming, when I came home. And then of course, elk season happens on the front side of big game hunting seasons in Texas. So, not to go off on a different tangent, but also when I returned home from the elk hunt, our own hunting season started here. We jumped right into our own deer hunts. We jumped right into the Texas Youth Hunting Program hunts that I volunteer for. So I immediately kind of went off on other things and really haven't had a ton of time to process some of that stuff.
Well, and it was also convenient because of that. You weren't forced to process it.
I wasn't. Now I am. Right. I got to produce content for this.
Now we got to talk through it. You're like, okay, now we're talking through it. I guess
my producer's making me actually produce content from all this stuff that I'm going to go do. And I guess if I'm going to have the excuse to go do it, I need to produce some content.
Well, you talked about saying hey, I couldn't. It's pretty jarring. Just two things we talked about. You mentioned, hey, my people didn't get to experience this.
Yeah.
And because I'm just thinking of coming back, and like you said, son, math issue you're talking about here, and so these things are oil and water, but it's man, I can imagine you're okay. So a little example was, this is so stupid. I can't think of anything in my life, but the one and only time as an adult got a chance because of a conference. I was at Disney World. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw we would call it fireworks at the castle or whatever. And I didn't know what I was going to be able to experience. I didn't know what the experience was going to be. So I didn't know what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Then I experienced it. I had the exact same thought. What a shame that they did not hear, because I can't explain this. And I only came away saying, okay, there is no. For that example, there's no other fireworks show that I'm going to see that'll ever top this, ever.
Yeah.
And I got to share it with no one. But then you go home, and I don't have a story to say, whatever, it's an analogy, but you go home and you have literally the opposite experience. And I don't know, you got one, you're just okay, I'm not going to reconcile this. But it's got to be pretty jarring. Maybe, I don't even know there's a better
jarring
word.
Is the word. No, jarring is the exact word. And your example is a great one. Because I used to even say, I actually have very few pictures. I'm still not very good about taking pictures on trips. But for the first 2 decades of my hunting and fishing, I have almost no pictures. I mean, I went to Alaska and went fishing and caught trophy fish. I think I have 2 pictures. When I was a young man, just for one example. And I would sort of arrogantly and condescendingly even say, well, if you want to see it, go do it. And there's something good in that saying. Yeah. Something motivating, hopefully. That's what part of what Hunt, Fish, Thrive is now about. But really, I was saying it sort of smugly like that because I really just needed to say I'm not good at taking good pictures and communicating the experience here. My words and my pictures just seem to diminish from, overused word, but the grandeur of what I just was immersed in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then to come back to traffic and some jackhole cutting you off because he wants to drive a little faster and
problems.
Problems.
Come back,
just all of it.
Come back problems.
I was hard not to have some what the F stuff as I entered back into the city and felt that grandeur, not, I want to say ebb away, but actually it felt like it was being stolen from me, right? And we have a visceral, a gut level response to that, you know, and it was hard not to. And then I'm sitting in my truck going, I mean, I'm not even home yet. And I want to be angry. I'm supposed to be filled with joy, you know.
So it's like, you know, it's kind of tough if you go out and you're saying, hey, here's this thriving experience, right?
Which very much was. I'm not,
Okay, so
kind of got on a tangent here, but.
But, you know, you said the word stole from you. I'm just thinking like, that is, I don't know, you know, like that is a very difficult thing to process because, you know, it's, well, one, Hunt, Fish, Thrive is to say, experiencing this is elevating a wellness. All right? But you just said, I feel like it was stolen from me. So my thing is that processing something maybe unexpected in this is that these experiences can be taken. I mean, this one was. And so my thing is like, I'm immediately going, like, you know, down the road a little bit going, okay, is it preventable?
Yes.
You know, and not that I'm going to sidetrack again, but, and this is way over, this is not to say anything, but they always say about like the, this is a little nerdy too, but I read something, I think you read the same book, that said when people go off to war, and this is not war, you know, read which one? There's the Iliad and the Odyssey. Going to war, young men read Iliad. Right?
Yes.
Coming home, they need to read Odyssey.
Yes.
Right? So, again, I'm not making any comparisons. I'm just saying when there's two environments that are so starkly different from one another, there is a preparation, which was the last time we talked about. I got to prepare. You're preparing to go do this elk hunt. But on the flip side, there's actually another piece of content we should have, and that's preparing going home.
Because the word that comes to mind as you say that is there's a preparation and then there's a collision.
Yeah.
There's a collision.
Yeah. It's going to happen.
Which is,
you know, right?
Since I had
the collisions
on this trip.
But the collision is going to happen.
It's going to happen.
So the collision can steal that experience, but then the preparation in that actually can maybe protect it.
Well,
you know?
and you've walked me into this so well, so because that experience and that well-being and that joy wasn't stolen from me, because it can't be stolen from me. That's actually an impossibility, because I'm completely in charge of my feelings, which come from my thoughts. But that is a learned skill to harness or capture those thoughts, so that it doesn't then go into the anger. Well, the only way to do that, of course, is to have a collision with it, and then be able to say over time, to gain more and more ability to say, okay, wait a minute, not to use cheesy counselor language, but I'm feeling like this has been stolen from me. But to use a cognitive behavior process, or lots of different models that would allow us to say, okay, I'm feeling like that, but is that actually happening? Well, no, that's not actually happening, because somebody can't come into my brain or my psyche and take a feeling or a thought from me. So what is happening? Well, there is more traffic here than on the Forest Service road way up in the mountains. Although there can be some traffic jams on the Forest Service road way up in the mountains during second season over-the-counter Colorado elk. There's no doubt the Orange Army was in force, which we talked about in the preparation. But to be able to say, okay, there are these things, but that doesn't have to mean I get angry or that something's stolen or whatever. To develop that ability to separate context, situations from visceral feelings that just sort of come up out of our guts without having been thought about, but then to see those, challenge them, and adopt or formulate and adopt a viable alternate thought. And I'm just sort of using cognitive behavior therapy. I send my clients to an app called the Thought Diary. It's a free app. There's lots of them out there that you can kind of help you walk through this, right? So then you would adopt a viable alternate thought. And what's wonderful about the alternate thought is it just has to be viable. It doesn't have to be true. It just needs to be able to be true, right? So here's one. My son missed me so badly and wanted to be on the elk hunt with me so much that he could not concentrate on math. All he could do was sit in math class and think, I want to be elk hunting with my daddy. I have just as much evidence that that's true as any other of these goofy thoughts that I might have that make me think that this is being stolen from me. Just as much proof. In fact, when you come down to it, and this is what gets exciting about challenging that process and identifying the alternate thought. Not only do I have just as much evidence, which is almost none, for this being stolen from me.
Makes sense.
I know my son missed me and wanted to be elk hunting with me.
Yeah, that's true.
I know that actually is a fact. I don't know that that's why he made bad grades on math, but here's the question, and here's what I encourage folks to challenge. Can this be true? Yes. Would it be would me treating it as if it's true be harmful to me or anyone else? No. If it would, then it's not a cool and it's not viable alternate thought anymore. If it'd be harmful to self or others, but that wouldn't be. Is it delusional? Again, delusion. Maybe it is a little delusional, but delusional in a harmful way? No. Does it make me feel better and do better? Yes, right? Like I can't wait to talk to my son now this evening. I'm going to go back and we're going to have another conversation now about that math week. We've had many conversations about it since then, by the way. We're going to have another one now. You know, and that's an example. I didn't even intend. None of this is a setup. We're just doing this on the fly, right?
Absolutely.
But there's an example of an alternate thought. Now I'm thriving again. Literally inside my body is exploding with joy again, right? That's how it works. That's how the cognitive process works, and that's and life, of course, gives us infinite opportunities to practice this.
Yeah.
Or practice doing it the other way. It was stolen from me. I was a victim. You know, versus, okay. And this can feel good-ish in a way, and that's a whole psychology thing, and this can be difficult to challenge that. And sometimes, I mean, I always tell clients, sometimes it doesn't lead to an epiphany or to something that feels wonderful, but I don't know, I've been doing this a long time. It usually, I can't even think of an example of where it wasn't like, man, that feels great. And it was easy to come up with an alternate thought that felt wonderful. It wasn't like pulling teeth or something. People think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't mean to go there, but boy, we got there, right?
No, we did.
There's some cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah, no, it's very, very real. No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, I'm just glad I can be here to help you process that alternate.
But, you know, seriously, on that, you know, and this is kind of what we've said we want Hunt Fish Thrive to be. We don't have a campfire here in front of us, but we're not in a hunting camp, or we're not sitting on the dock at the coast. Times where these conversations do naturally come out, but that's what we wanted to try to create here, because having an observer brings that stuff out in us, which is why telling the stories, which is so consistent with hunting and fishing, you know, is so important, and what we're trying to tie here.
How many people came home? How many people come home from these types of hunts back to their life?
All of them. Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, those that come home.
Okay.
You know, I'm just saying. You know, from the Orange Army. I mean, whatever the total.
Which I'm a part of, by the
experience.
way, the Orange
Right.
Army.
Okay, that's good. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
yeah.
enough. It's not a bust on them. It's just I'm using them to describe the
I know
amount.
you're not. But I want to make sure I'm not creating a sort of a derogatory thing, because I'm in the Orange Army, man. I'm that dude driving around in my pickup like with not having any idea what to do next. You know.
But I guess my point is many people all have the same experience. Okay. You know, when you've talked about, what's his name, Randy
Newberg,
right? Okay. So yeah, he's got how many elk hunts under his belt? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, you'll never have another one where you come back into this unprepared. So in a sense, the experience is a preparation for next year. Talk about the next elk hunt. Now you can say, son, how could, maybe there's something else you can do in helping him. We just were in the garage preparing. Maybe there's a preparation for him, until he can join you.
Yeah.
Versus Dad just gone.
Yeah.
You prepared. We talked about preparing in your mind and heart. Am I ready? Do I have what it takes? Mm-hmm. You go experience something you just mentioned where I wish my people were with me. Okay, he's having the opposite feeling. I wish I was with my dad to experience. It's the same feeling. You're gone. He's not experiencing it. You are experiencing it, and you're on different sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. You're saying, I get to experience it. They've missed out. They just know they missed out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still that feeling. So.
Yeah. Well,
anyways,
it's
so the next one. Who knows?
Well, for example, came Christmas buying time. And I did think about it in the context of what you're saying, but I found some books. I found a series of books, in fact. I should name them, but I can't think of the author's name just right off the top of my head. But number one is titled The Elk Hunt, about a boy that goes on elk hunt, I think with an uncle or a family friend or something, and then come to find out, then he goes to a ranch, and the next month we're going to be reading these books, right? It's like Little House on the Prairie for boys.
Which, by the way, we will put a link. This is YouTube in the description.
Okay,
for
that'd
that
be
book.
Great. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so in that description, you can find that same book. So
perfect. Thank you for that, because I'd love people to be reading these to try to create some of that picture. Yeah. Right. And we started reading the book recently, and it took us like 30 minutes to read half a page because elk hunting stories started. Oh, okay, what he's describing here. Man, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about that.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Hey, I want to divert us real quick, and you can edit this out later.
Yeah, sure.
But let me ask you a quick question. As we were talking about that, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but as we were talking about that, I saw emotion welling up in your eyes a couple of times, I believe. Right when I first said that about
which part? Yeah.
Maybe Caleb's over there thinking, I miss my daddy. And I wish I was on that elk hunt with him. Mm-hmm. And just a second ago when you were talking about, preparing your son for that, I thought I saw emotion welling up in your eyes.
Yeah, I think, because it's the second time you've maybe asked that or whatever, but there are things that maybe you're seeing. I think when there's something that hits to an emotional heart of something, connection in either relationships. I mean, obviously, I'm a father of three boys.
Awesome boys.
Right.
And an awesome daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I think it's me putting myself in that place. Right? It's a deep empathy. I have an ability, I think, naturally to go, I didn't experience it, but I'm imagining what you experienced. Yeah. And I show emotion. So it could come from, again, I know people say it comes, you blame genetics from whatever, but I had a grandpa on my mom's dad, who just would cry like a baby, openly in front of people.
Yeah,
hug,
very empathetic.
He had no care to show emotion.
Yeah,
and he was just emotional. And I believe my mom's kind of emotional type, whatever.
Yeah,
He's creative. I'm a creative person. He was creative. He loved drawing and stuff. He never did anything with it. My mom as well. I think I get that sense from them.
Okay.
My dad told me once at his grandpa's funeral, the grandpa he loved, that he says he thought about crying once. But the truth is, he's not making it up. He's not trying to be tough.
That sounds like my dad. Yeah.
And so the thing is that, I mean, if my dad ever teared up, I don't have a memory of it.
Yeah.
If I just seeing it, as a kid, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just my dad. But I have no problem being emotional, and so I feel you're seeing me really connect.
Well,
and so if there was something personal I have no problem saying it.
Okay.
But it's like literally I put myself in there, and then I saw my sons, right? And actually, by that, not to get into it, I felt I just learned. I'm learning right now when I do go on that hunt and they can't go. Because what you've done is you saved me, and that's maybe the truth of it. You're saving me that experience to, I said, not lose it, but You know, what's the saying? You know, like, don't make mistakes to learn. Just learn from other people's mistakes. Mm-hmm. And this is not a mistake, but I'm using this as an analogy.
Yeah. Experiences.
Like, you had the experience. There's no reason that it'd be, I don't know, there's probably another statement where you just blindly go through life not realizing that you're so much to be learned.
Oh, yeah, somebody famous said, the unexamined life ain't worth living.
That's
that's
so
my
like,
paraphrase.
There you go.
That ain't accurate.
But look, as long as you say it's paraphrased mangled, you can quote anybody you want.
There you go. Good deal.
But I guess, because you asked that, and that's just, and I'm glad you dug into that. It's very key. I didn't go on the trip, obviously.
Yeah.
But you bringing me along and then allowing me to be in that and kind of envision that.
Well, and
because that's part of what I do too. Is like, if I'm like, I am asking the question as we talk, in these conversations, like, like, what would I want to know? Like, what did he experience? Okay, and I'm driving the truck home. It's whatever, and then I can see, so those are kind of connecting dots too. So.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe just to tie that up real quick.
As I drink my coffee.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I totally just lost my train of thought. Not because you said that, I just lost it. When you get old like me, that happens. And a couple of bangs on the head and what have you.
But can I, again, and if you come back to it, that's fine, But, I just being, what do they call an empath, or I don't know, or whatever.
Well, it is. So a couple things. You reminded me on both counts there. Let me say the one I forgot first. Creating that vision. I mean, that's what the oral tradition and narrative is about. And again, not that hunting and fishing own that, although some anthropologists do have strong suggestions that society had at its roots, so I won't go into this too much, but some collaborative stuff about hunting.
Yeah.
So you saying, create that vision. Of course, the Bible tells us without vision, the people perish, right? So that can mean a lot of different things, but I appreciate you saying that the way we're talking about this kind of gives you a vision, not just of the hunt, but of family and of relationships, and not only how you can use that on a hunt, but how you can use it in a bunch of realms of life. So anyhow, other thing I want to comment to real quick, and we'll move on. And I'm not going to go too far down this road, but you are an empath. Empathy and sympathy are two different things. So I'm going to sort of do a little psychology education right quick, especially for all those men out there that don't want to think sympathy or empathy. Empathy is mostly in the brain. Sympathy is more like feeling bad. We'll talk more about this in a future thing in Hunt, Fish, Thrive, because I do think this is really important to teach. I teach this in counseling constantly. Most men have the ability to be extremely empathetic, but maybe not sympathetic, and that's okay. And people in general, I'm not picking on men here. But empathetic is the ability to conceptualize what is happening or what somebody's going through or what have you. And that's creativity, like you said. And, versus sympathy is just feeling bad, which I have none of. People are shocked when they sometimes hear I'm a counselor, because I have no sympathy. I tell kids all the time, I probably told your kids when we went hunting with them, listen, if you fall down and get hurt or if something happens and you cry, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh at you. But then if we're going to have a conversation, I'm going to express a lot of empathy, right? So anyhow, to go back to what you were saying there about empathy, that's just a little bit on it. There's obviously a whole lot more to that.
And I should say, when you see me disappear, so we still have batteries and things. So
oh, yeah.
You're seeing behind the sscenes part of this as we work out a process. So when you see me disappear, I wasn't going to the restroom. I already did that. So.
No, that'd be weird.
That's good.
No, that is good to see behind the scenes, because I'll segue into that. We're developing as we have these conversations, and we're just asking folks to join us in that development of the vernacular of Hunt, Fish, Thrive, of the style of Hunt, Fish, Thrive. I mean, connecting well-being and relationships and all these things that we're connecting with Hunt, Fish, Thrive. That's not new, right? Wonderfully, hunting and fishing have a long and rich tradition of philosophy and poetry and seeing esoteric things, nobody's shocked when we head offshore on the boat and I start crying. Again, if somebody cuts themselves, I'm going to laugh at them, but then I cry at the sunrise through the storm clouds heading offshore out of Port O'Connor. But that's not unique. I mean, that cuts to the heart of people. I mean, that's something that already exists in hunting and fishing. What we're trying to do with Hunt, Fish, Thrive is make a very direct connection between those things and some tenets of psychology and philosophy and some things like that to try to empower this whole deal, right? Individually, collectively for the community of Hunt, Fish, Thrive, and really for our society. We'll be talking more about these kinds of things, but the big dream is I think hunters and anglers are some of the best folks in the universe, and not only need to shrink back from mainstream society because we're worried about what people think about what we do as hunters and fishermen, but be the leaders in hunting or in society as hunters and fishermen, and we're not that far removed from that. We are not a couple of election cycles from any presidential candidate having to have his token pheasant hunting picture, right? Mm-hmm. So not, again, to go down that road too far, but just as we do these initial podcasts, we're talking about an elk hunt in this case, but also behind the scenes is what brought that out, developing this entity of Hunt, Fish, Thrive, not a company, but a movement that we want people to be a part of. Mm-hmm. So anyhow.
Awesome. Yeah.
So you want me to tell you about the elk hunt?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to sidetrack. I'm not going to rabbit trail anymore.
Yeah.
We'll just talk about the elk hunt. So went on my elk hunt, second season, Colorado, which is over-the-counter tag. I didn't have to draw, which means lots of other people can do the same. Lots of folks there. I've been in the unit a little bit before. Went a day early, drove around the unit, or actually the day I got there, left super early from here. Got there about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had 3 or 4 hours I had planned some trailheads and some places that I wanted to drive and see how many people were there, see what the country kind of looked like. For example, I drove up to what I thought was going to be my main area that I'd been looking at topo maps and stuff. When I talked to the biologist from Colorado Parks and Wildlife that was over that area, I'd mentioned this area. And he didn't burst out laughing at me, but he asked me, "Have you ever been in that country before?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, you might take a look at it." And when I drove up to the trailhead, I saw why, because it basically went up straight up 3,000 feet, which was just like, duh, why didn't I saw them topo lines on the map, but never counted them, and it was just like, I want that to be able to happen someday, but my Texas Flatlander legs ain't ready for that. But that was good because, I went and checked out some other areas, found an area I liked, and decided, actually I found an area I liked, set up an initial camp, broke my camp stove, making myself some coffee, camp stove I've had for 25 years, had failed to follow the principle that I've heard actually on an offshore fishing podcast, but apparently said by the Navy SEALs, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I'd failed to do that, so I had one stove. So then I had to drive all the way back to town to buy and go to about 6 different stores on the day before over-the-counter elk season started. So there was like 8 million people at the Walmart sporting goods section. Actually found a stove in a hardware store. And by the time I got back into the hills, I had to make a plan adjustment, which turned out to be good. So I made a plan adjustment, for opening morning, and there was just a trail, and I just decided I'm going to walk down this trail. Unscouted, not really well prepared there. Camped that night, hopped up the next morning, an hour before daylight. Jump on this trail. Well, it's an unmarked trail, but it does appear, not on a map, but it does appear on OnX and some of these things. So, there's 10 other guys, right? Lots of Texans up in Colorado, though. So me and this fella start talking, and he spills the beans that, which I knew this part, that this trail was on a ridge above private land with irrigated alfalfa. Really good feed for these elk, right? And I'd seen all this on mapping and stuff. I mean, I knew that, but he admitted that 3 days before they had seen 250 elk in that field, to include a bunch of bulls bugling. So we're walking along, and he tells me kind of where he's going, and I haven't decided where I'm going yet, and we're walking up this trail. I hadn't decided where I'm going because he told me where he was going, and that's exactly where I'd planned on going, and I feel like he kind of owned that. Well, in the dark, we start hearing a bull bugling, just screaming. And so I stop. He keeps going. I stop. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Another guy comes along with his hunting companion, and I talked to them the day before as well, or not that morning, the day before. And he said he had seen a few spike bulls, young, not legal bulls, there the day before. He seemed to think that bull that was screaming was a hunter calling, which I didn't feel like it was. And so he kept going. Maybe that was just his reason to keep going. I don't know. Well, this bull's getting closer. That's still pitch black, dark. But I go off the trail towards this, I wouldn't call it a cliff, but it drops off precipitously down into this field, maybe a half a mile from this irrigated alfalfa field. So I set up, just in the dark, I don't really know what I'm setting up on. Well, now I'm hearing brush popping, trees popping, this bull is screaming, cows are calling. There's a whole freaking herd coming towards me, right? It's getting lighter, still not legal shooting light. 12 minutes, and then I get kind of distracted because these other, still people, it's like a freaking train of people coming up this trail. And these guys come up the trail and they hear the bull screaming and they come off the trail towards me. So I'm waving my green headlamp hoping they'll see me and bow off. No, they just set up like 50 yards away from me. Probably more than 50 yards, 100 yards maybe. Too close. So now I'm worried all about them. And the elk have kind of stopped a little bit. I was worried they spooked them. And but I'm settled, kind of like whatever, they're doing their thing. I'm watching for daylight. The elk still calling a little bit. And I realize off this drop, this is 12 minutes before legal shooting light. Very strict on the exact minute when legal shooting light will be here. They enforce that we should always, legal shooting light being 30 minutes before official sunrise, not 30 minutes before kind of sunrise. And they print this, they do this well in Colorado, and then they enforce it. And I don't know if one of these headlamps game warden, I wouldn't have broke the law anyway, obviously. But I'm like watching my clock is what I'm trying to get at here. Exactly 12 minutes before shooting light, that bull's standing 20 yards in front of me. I can see him. 20 yards. Legal.
Golly.
Not like a super monster, and it's too dark to tell too much, but definitely a wide, long, branch-antlered bull standing right there.
It's crazy.
Right? Well, he busts me hardcore. Right? I mean, he barks, he wheels on a dime, and the whole freaking woods explode. I can't know, but I've heard lots of cattle run through the brush and lots of stuff. I'm going to say there were 15 to 20 animals in that herd. Right? I mean, they just explode through there. Right? But they weren't spooked hard. I didn't know exactly what I was, and sounds and distances kind of deceptive, at least for me in those thick woods. But I'm going to say they didn't run any more than 100 yards. Right? And then just start kind of easing up the mountain again. Of course, lots of guys have gone up that way. And spoiler, subsequently, when it did get shooting light, I heard 4 to 5 shots come from up where they went. Mm-hmm. And I know at least one bull was killed up there early on. But that happened later. But I stay there because I can still hear some movement down in there, and who knows what might happen. And the bull starts, a bull, I should say, starts bugling again, but more subtly. 7 minutes later, 5 minutes before legal shooting light, I kind of thought, I was a little bit in a surreal place. Another bull is standing in that exact same spot, 20 yards in front of me. And of course, it's 5 minutes before shooting light. I'm going to see him plain as day, right? Legal bull. Not as big, small, branch antler. They got to be 4 points in Colorado on one side. He was the legal bull. All right. I did look at him through my scope. Not that I was going to shoot him, but I mean, it was an easy shot. It was an easy shot. Could have killed him easy. All right, plenty of light at 5 minutes before shooting light, but I didn't shoot him. And he stood there and looked at me for not a long time, and wheels, and he's gone. Right.
Wow.
And that was probably a satellite bull, what they call a satellite bull, that was following that herd with that big herd bull.
Yeah.
That was opening morning. I sat there for 30, 40 minutes after sun comes up. Nothing. That was the herd. Right. But I've heard some gunshots up the mountain from me. I've heard some calls. Well, of course, then when I look, I realized I accidentally set up on the Elk Highway. I'll, by the way, be sitting there opening morning next year. Mm-hmm. And that's a part of this, by the way, is, you got to do I learned the spot totally accidentally, But anyhow, so this draw goes up, way up into the mountains, and I just start working along there up through the morning, and I'm just looking at cool stuff and seeing lots of elk sign. And
how many people at this point do you see after getting off that main kind of trail heading out? I mean, as you're doing these other things, do you see other people?
Actually saw 0 people.
Okay.
But that does factor in. Because I'm kind of walking along the cliff edge here, which I don't know is necessarily right, and get about as high as you can go.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of paralleling that trail that's just a dotted line on X. And I get up pretty high and kind of get cliffed out where I can't go any farther because of the cliffs. So then I'm going to cut in. Basically, I'm going to end up doing a big loop. Well, I get up and now I'm up in the snow. So where I started, there was no snow. Now where I am, the snow's probably 6 inches deep, deeper in some places. And man, I'm in a hot spot. I mean, there's smoking elk poop. I mean, literally steaming in the snow, melting into the snow, tracks. And this bull, or a bull, lights up. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Just lights up, starts bugling. I don't know, no more than 200 yards away, but it is thick, super thick. But he is screaming. And some cows start calling. And I'm between them. Well, no, I'm not exactly between them. Him, the cows, and me would form like a triangle. Not like a right triangle where all the sides are equal, though. I'm close to the line to almost make it where I'm between them. And a preparation thing hit me. I wasn't super confident in my cow calling. And I should have been. Because he's going to go to those cows. Now, so those cows are calling, bunch of them. Like, 4 or 5 cows at least, like a group. They'd call over each other. So I find as big a clearing as I can find. I can see about 80 yards. He's getting close. And I'm on more of the trail, and they're sort of up on the hill, so I think he might come to me first. He's coming. I do whisper out a couple of little elk calls, cow calls, and he's coming. He is coming. And I'm freaking. right? And a shot rings out.
Really?
At least one of those other cows that was calling was not a cow, but was another dude calling. Now, I don't know if they were working some kind of herd or calling thing, and it was all them calling, but it was multiple cow voices, like at the same time. Mm-hmm. So maybe they were between the herd and him too, but a shot rings out. Now, it was pretty close, so I might not have heard there's a thump when you hit what you're shooting at. Sometimes, most of the time, not always. Sometimes, depending on the angle, you can't hear it. There was not that. And then after about 30 minutes, I sat there for long. So I didn't know if they even hit him. Of course, he shuts up. And I believe they were definitely shooting at him based on where everything was. So to your question earlier, was I seeing more hunters? Well, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't know it. I was moving. I might have walked past guys that were sitting or whatever. And then they start yelling about 30 minutes later. Loud enough where I can hear them, but not loud enough where I can hear what they're saying. So I don't know if they hit that bull or not.
Pretty wild.
It was a crazy first morning.
I don't know. It's pretty. I don't know to think of the being on, almost on top of each other. You're in this thing, and then there's a shot. It's like kind of surreal. So, kind of like you're like, I'm over here experiencing a hunt,
feeling like I'm Jim Bridger 200 years ago, all alone by myself in the mountains,
and you're experiencing their hunt.
Yeah, and come to that I'm watching a hunting show. Yeah,
kind of weird.
It was a little weird.
Yeah,
and it could be a little scary. I kind of purposefully sort of have not allowed my mind.
Yeah,
because I think if there's certain things you don't want to think about. Like when you're swimming in the lake, you just don't want to know what's underneath the water, right? Yeah. Like, why bother? Who cares? I don't want to think about that when I'm up there because then you won't go.
But,
but it's a little scary from a safety perspective, which is why the orange is such a big deal.
Right. So, I don't know, this is not an analogy, but in fishing, you come across, you mess up somebody's fishing, like you see them.
Sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
But the equivalent to that, and you're like I literally could step over somebody sitting there, walk by, or walk in front, or
and I had on Elk Hunt 2 years ago, I thought I was sneaking along, and there's a dude sitting there literally 20 yards away.
And he's could literally be going.
He never even waved at me, so he might have been asleep.
But I mean, to your point, man, those interactions are pretty interesting to consider.
Well,
there could be actual interaction. You could walk past them, but then there could be an interaction.
Oh yeah, and a hunter was killed in Colorado this year.
Really?
Yeah. It'll be a law-changing thing probably.
Wow.
In rifle season, we have to wear orange, which isn't a problem because you're not during archery season. You don't have to wear orange.
It would happen then? Because
you're getting so close to the elk that they feel like that would be a detriment. Well, there's a 1 week or 10 days or whatever it is, I'm not sure, where muzzleloader firearms season overlaps archery season.
I see. Yeah.
And a muzzleloader hunter. I don't know all the details, but that's
and
what
there
happened.
Wasn't an orange in that.
So the archery hunter didn't have orange on and got shot. And again, I don't know the details.
Wait, muzzleloader got shot?
No, the muzzleloader guy shot the archery guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and if I say any of those details wrong, the point remains that this, back to the safety point, that there's some legitimacy, and there, there's maybe some laws change out of that, which they're debating, and of course. Like most things, kind of like I said when I was in the Army or when I was a shark fisherman, the most dangerous part of any of this is the drive down the highway to the place.
Yeah.
Right? It's dramatic when a hunter's killed, but the reality is more hunters died on driving to their hunts on the highway than got shot. And that'll probably never,
Yeah, it's because society we've accepted that risk.
Yeah, we're not making light of anything, obviously, or whatever. But But there's some things we just accept as safety issues.
That's right.
Is the point.
Well, even on the road here.
So no point in thinking about it, really, right?
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah, I live on 3. Yeah.
But I'm saying, but like in Texas, it's common. You see the sign. It's adding up the. Yeah. And it's like, okay, it says 3,000. It should strike me.
It should.
But if it said 10,000, like what number would strike me? But I get what they're trying to do.
But if you're the one, it's only one.
Oh, no, it's that your family member or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, like, one is, it should be 0.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so to your point, it's just that accepted risk. I mean, and I feel it here when you use an analogy because my almost 16-year-old daughter she's doing her learner's permit and we're driving and it's like, what are you watching?
Yeah.
She's driving.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this more later, but that daughter that got her first 2 deer the other day was just as excited as a human can be.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
It was amazing. And we'll talk in detail about that in the future. But real quick, so to kind of what we were talking about there with the safety, because that happened, gunshot there, 50 yards, 100 yards away. And my distances could be off. It's deceptive in the mountains like that, but close. The bull's bugling so close enough, and this may be old hat to people who are more experienced, but that I can hear him inhale to do his bugle, right? So it's close, but anyhow, hunt around the mountains still, find a big clearing that, and I'm kind of tired by now. I'm a lowlander. I think I've done about 8 miles at this point. So, it's a good hike.
Yeah. What's the altitude?
Pretty high there. It's probably at about 9,500 to 10, I think, there. Wow. But I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right.
And not to be acclimated. That's a big...
So I screwed up, by the way.
Yeah.
I did. I tried to do the, it'll be all right kind of deal. And just didn't follow the good advice and slept a little too high the first night I was there.
Did you end up pretty bad headache?
I think I just kind of kicked myself. I just gut punched myself. I didn't get a super bad headache, but I think I depleted myself before the hunt really even started. In some ways.
Gotcha.
And then overdid it on the first day probably for my conditioning. So I did about 8 miles and gained, I think 1,200 feet, like a lot.
Yeah, too much.
Well, during the summer, I'd done a hike in New Mexico, just a little peak bag hike, and I kept thinking, well, I did more than this then, Well, but I'd been up there for a week.
Yep.
The altitude wasn't quite as high, although it was pretty close. We hiked up to about 10,000 feet on that. But we'd been sleeping below 8,000 feet every night for a week, and I don't know, it's just a lot of difference. It was super pleasant weather versus pretty cold, anyway.
Yeah.
So found a big meadow, sat on this meadow for the rest of the day. Didn't see anything, but I saw like 6 hunters, By the way, the spot I had set up on before I broke my stove and bailed on, I heard 27 gunshots come from up in there during the day because it was right to the sort of the northeast of me, maybe a mile.
Those experiences are going to impact you.
Yeah, you learn from them. And
not learn, but just, it's like, one, I'm learning it, you're off doing this thing on your own, and then you're really not on your own. And then, to hear a lot of gunshots, this probably has a... depends on what part of the hunt it is. It could create some anxiety, I bet.
It does. And it can create... I'm just inventing this term right now, so it may be goofy. I've probably heard it before. Is there a term called the Treadmill Effect? It can feel like you're putting in a lot of effort, not really going anywhere. And yet that the effort is beneficial, right? Like I've run 1 million miles on a treadmill. It's worth it to get you in shape, but it's not as enjoyable as running along the lake or something.
Not until the reward part of it.
Yeah, so
because you always look back.
So sometimes it can feel like that, right? Yeah. Or talking about the Orange Army, I was, just to give credit. I was driving down. I was had noticed these guys, man, they're just driving up and down the roads, but then one of them kills a nice mule deer, and it's like, well, more power to them, man. They're doing some good stuff out here. They're having their experience,
I feel like that each gunshot might do the whole fear of missing out just a little bit. Too.
Well, that'd be a great. We have kind of committed right now to not going down these psychology roads, but that is a great point. That is exact. It viscerally creates a fear of missing out.
Yeah. Each one.
Right.
Every time you hear it.
Just like our buddy Donnie, who we love and will teasingly talk about over the years, we can be on a spot in the middle of the freaking ocean and catching fish. And he can see a boat that's like a speck. He wants to go over there, man. He cannot resist it. He's got to go see what they're doing. Right? Fear of missing out. Even though we're doing fine where we are. Right? Or even wonderful where we are. He's got to go. He's got to go. And to your point, I'm teasing Donnie. You're going to listen to this, Donnie. I'm being good-natured. Yeah, every time you hear that gunshot, you want to tell yourself, lots of elk in the woods. No big deal.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of a gut punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And in fact, to the point there that I stayed there for a day or two, and then I went to another plan where I went to literally the end of the road. I was sort of talking about that earlier, right? Where I was surrounded on three sides by wilderness area where no vehicles, horses and foot traffic only. In that last spot I was camping there that I was describing, way up on the mountain, there was a beautiful clearing that I won't bore you with the details now, but just checks so many boxes on what should be amazing for elk. And it was about an 800-foot elevation gain and about a mile up there, which you need to get a mile off, they say, if to up your success. And by that point in the trip, I couldn't get there. And when I say I couldn't get there, I mean I didn't even try. Like I couldn't get there in my mind. I just couldn't get there, And so it's still plaguing me a little bit. And a secret spot that I have, by the way, that the biologist says that he doesn't think I can get to, but I think I can get to. That's still plaguing me. I didn't even try that spot. So I guess my point is, not to end this hunting story too abruptly, started off with a bang, learned a ton about elk hunting, about being in the mountains, about traveling to hunt, a ton about myself, a ton about life. We'll talk all about that in some future stuff. But had some great experiences. Didn't come home, which is probably very apparent to folks that have listened to these stories. Didn't come home with an elk. Had a great trip, had a very successful trip. But definitely, and this is a word you can hear a lot from me, definitely have some unfinished business. Which is cool in a way. Maybe here's the last takeaway. Unfinished business can be a terrible thing. In psychology, we use it to talk about the creation or the manifestation of anxiety. It can be a regretful thing. You'll hear guys say, don't leave anything on the mountain. Don't be regretting for the next year that you wished you would have stayed one more day and done this or that. But unfinished business can be reframed as a motivator, as a thing that doesn't kick you out of the game but keeps you in the game. And I guess I'm happy to say, because I was worried, very worried. So this is not the product of me being good, wonderful or something. It's taken effort and intention to decide I want my unfinished business to be invigorating and exciting and keep me thinking about it and keep me wanting to go back. And I can't wait. In fact, I can't wait so bad that I don't think I'm going to wait for elk season. I think I'm going to go spring turkey hunting up there here in a couple of months to, for the cause of scouting more for elk and getting more experience in the mountains and what have you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, appreciate all that. Thanks for the meandering too. So, as you said, I think that there's additional podcast, episodes here we can continue to unpack.
Yeah.
More than we kind of figured we would, or be able to. So.
And early on, because as we've said, been dreaming about Hunt, Fish, Thrive and trying to talk about this psychology stuff and well-being, and we'll be talking about relationships and talking about the environments, the habitats we create around ourselves, naturally and otherwise. But we got all this that's been building up. It's kind of like a band's first album, and it's just like, oh my God,
yeah,
it's the best album, right? And then their second one sucks, right? But it's because they've been writing the first album for like 15 years. And then they got to write the second album in 4 months,
yeah.
Right? So we got a lot built up here that we're trying to put out there, and that'll we'll get a lot of that said, and I won't have to keep saying that over time.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, it's
Awesome.
fun to talk about psychology in the context of hunting and fishing.
Yeah, thanks for leading us. This is awesome.
You bet, man. Thanks for asking me the questions. Sure. All right, thanks for being here for our second episode, and I know that. We were here to talk about the elk hunt. We talked about a lot of different things and a little bit about the elk hunt. And we're going to talk more in a future episode about some of the more personal stuff that I learned on this elk hunt. I learned a lot about myself and a lot about things that are good about myself and things that I want to work on in myself. So look forward to that in the future. But thank you so much for being here for this episode. And please give us feedback. We want to hear from you. We hope it's good. I'll be honest, I've been scared to do this because I've been scared of criticism, and yet I want to learn from the things that you may have to teach me about how I can present these things to you, because it is my deepest desire to present perspectives, philosophies, psychologies that can be helpful to you, to me, to us. So give us feedback. If you want to give us a like or share, we would love that. Spread the word if you feel like what we're doing is good. And if you don't, tell us what we can do to do better, because we want to serve you. Thank you so much for being here. See you next time.